What if one announcement could change the future of the monarchy? Prince Edward's new role as Duke of Edinburgh is more than just a title, it's a defining moment with King Charles reshaping the royal family. Edward now carries his father's legacy while navigating a changing institution. Will his children, Lady Louise Windsor and James Earl of Wessex, take on public roles? Is the monarchy prepared for fewer working royals? And what does this shift mean for its future? Let's dive in. Prince Edward had never been one to seek the limelight among the royals. He was known for his quiet dedication to duty, his steadfast loyalty to the crown, and his unwavering commitment to the causes he championed. Unlike his older siblings, he had largely avoided the controversies that often surrounded the royal family. Yet on this particular day, the world turned its eyes to him. A shocking announcement had just been made, and it was one that would redefine his role in the monarchy forever. The news came from Buckingham Palace in an official statement, a rare mid-morning announcement that instantly captured public attention. Prince Edward, the youngest son of the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, had been granted a new title, one that had deep significance not only to him but to the entire nation. The king had bestowed upon him the title of Duke of Edinburgh, fulfilling a long-standing wish of their father. This was not an ordinary royal appointment. The title had belonged to Prince Philip for more than 7 decades, marking one of the longest-held peerages in British history. The announcement sent ripples through the media, political circles, and even royal watchers worldwide. Some had expected this moment years earlier, while others wondered what it would mean for the royal family's future, regardless of where they stood. One thing was certain: this marked a turning point for Prince Edward. In many ways, the title was more than just an honorary distinction. It came with expectations, responsibilities, and an enduring legacy that he was now entrusted to uphold. The Duke of Edinburgh's award, one of the most influential youth development programs in the world, was directly tied to this role. It had been Prince Philip's lifelong passion, a project he had nurtured and expanded across more than 100 countries for decades. Prince Edward had been deeply involved in the program, often working behind the scenes to ensure its continued success. Now, as the new Duke of Edinburgh, the responsibility of leading it fell entirely on his shoulders. The announcement was met with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Royal supporters praised the king's decision, seeing it as a well-earned recognition of Edward's years of dedicated service, but not everyone viewed it with the same enthusiasm. Some commentators questioned whether the role should have been granted to another royal, perhaps a younger and more visible member of the family. Others speculated about what this meant for the broader structure of the monarchy, especially at a time when King Charles had been signaling a desire to slim down the working royals. Despite the outside chatter, Prince Edward himself remained characteristically reserved. When asked about the honor, he expressed gratitude, but made it clear that for him, this was about continuing his father's legacy, rather than gaining a higher rank within the family. He knew that with the title came not just prestige, but responsibility. He had seen firsthand how his father had worked tirelessly to expand the Duke of Edinburgh's award, and how it had changed the lives of millions. Now it was his turn to ensure that its impact continued for future generations. His wife Sophie, who had also been given the title of Duchess of Edinburgh, was equally dedicated to their new roles over the years. She had taken on an increasing number of royal engagements, quietly earning respect for her commitment to charitable causes. As the news spread, the couple was spotted attending a public event where they were met with warm applause for those who had followed their journey. It was a reminder that despite their relatively low profile, they had been steadily building their legacy within the royal family. Beyond the excitement of an announcement, there were deeper implications to consider. This moment signaled a shift in the monarchy's internal dynamics. King Charles had always been clear about his vision for a modernized, streamlined royal family. The decision to pass the Duke of Edinburgh title to Edward reinforced that approach. While other European monarchies had actively reduced the number of working royals, the British royal family had long maintained a complex structure with multiple titles and duties. This appointment suggested a balancing act, acknowledging Edward's contributions while maintaining a selective approach to royal titles. At the same time, the move raised questions about the roles of the younger generation of royals. Prince William, as heir to the throne, had reportedly been involved in discussions about how to redefine royal responsibilities in the coming years. There had even been speculation about whether Prince Edward's children, Lady Louise Windsor and James, Earl of Wessex, might take on more visible roles. While neither currently holds the title of His or Her Royal Highness, their father's new status could open doors to new possibilities for their future within the monarchy. For now, though, the focus remained on Prince Edward and the significance of this moment as he stepped into his father's shoes. He did so with the knowledge that this was not just a title, but a duty. The Duke of Edinburgh had been a figure of strength and resilience, and those qualities would now be expected of him in an era where the monarchy was navigating both modern expectations and historic traditions. His role would be more crucial than ever. The weight of the title was something he had prepared for, yet the reality of it was still settling in as he and Sophie moved forward in their new positions. The road ahead was both familiar and uncharted. There was work to be done, expectations to be met, and above all, a legacy to uphold. As the day of the announcement unfolded, responses continued to pour in. Supporters celebrated the recognition of Edward's decades of service, while critics debated what it meant for the future of the royal family. But amidst the discussions and analysis, one fact remained clear: Prince Edward had just stepped into a new chapter of his life, one that would define his role in the monarchy for years to come. The announcement had settled in, but its implications were still unfolding. While Prince Edward was no stranger to responsibility, this new chapter placed him in a unique position within the monarchy. His title now linked him directly to one of the most influential royal legacies of the 20th century. The late Prince Philip had shaped the role of Duke of Edinburgh with an iron will, ensuring that his impact would be felt long after his passing. Now Edward had to navigate that legacy while adapting to the evolving expectations of the modern monarchy. There was no time to dwell on the significance of the moment. His first set of engagements as the Duke of Edinburgh began almost immediately. Attending events related to the Duke of Edinburgh's award had always been part of his routine. But this time his presence carried new weight. As the program's patron, he was no longer just a royal supporter, he was its official figurehead. His father had established the award in 1956, envisioning it as a way to help young people develop essential life skills through physical challenges, community service, and personal growth. Over the decades, the initiative had expanded globally with millions of participants in more than 100 countries. For Edward, this was a cause he had supported for most of his adult life. He had earned his own Gold Award in his youth, an experience that had left a lasting impression. Now, as its official representative, he was determined to honor his father's vision, while also ensuring the program remained relevant in an era where the needs of young people were changing rapidly. The challenges faced by today's youth, ranging from mental health struggles to shifting career landscapes, were far different from those in the mid-20th century. The award program had to evolve, and Edward was keenly aware of the responsibility that came with overseeing that transition. His first public speech as the Duke of Edinburgh reflected that awareness. Standing before an audience of young participants and supporters, he acknowledged the past, but focused on the future. He spoke about the importance of adaptability, resilience, and self-improvement values that had defined the Duke of Edinburgh's award from the beginning. But he also emphasized that the world was changing, and the program had to change with it. His words were met with warm applause, a sign that people recognized his commitment to keeping the initiative moving forward. His wife Sophie, the new Duchess of, stood beside him as she had for more than 2 decades together. They had quietly built a reputation as one of the most hardworking and dedicated royal couples. Unlike other high-profile members of the family, they had largely avoided personal scandals and instead focused on their work. Sophie had long been involved in various charities advocating for causes related to eye health, women's rights, and support for survivors of sexual violence. Now, as Duchess of Edinburgh, her role carried even greater significance. Their dynamic was one of partnership rather than hierarchy, a quality that had endeared them to many during engagements. Sophie was known for her hands-on approach, speaking candidly with people rather than maintaining formal distance. In the days following the announcement, she accompanied Edward to several events, reinforcing the idea that their new titles were not just symbolic but represented a renewed commitment to service beyond their personal approach to royal duties. There was another layer to this transition, one that spoke to the Lear shift within the monarchy. King Charles had been clear about his vision for a streamlined royal family, focusing on fewer working royals while maintaining public engagement in this context. Edward's appointment was significant. It reinforced the idea that while the monarchy was evolving, it was not discarding tradition entirely. The role of the Duke of Edinburgh was one of continuity, bridging the past with the present. This was particularly relevant in light of ongoing discussions about the future roles of younger royals. In recent years, speculation had grown about whether Edward and Sophie's children, Lady Louise Windsor and James Earl of Wessex, would take on more visible roles within the family. Neither currently holds the title of His or Her Royal Highness, a decision made by their parents in an effort to give them a more private upbringing. However, with Edward now holding a title of such prominence, questions arose about whether this approach would change Prince William, who had reportedly been involved in discussions about the monarchy's future, was said to favor a model that emphasized a smaller group of active royals. However, with King Charles prioritizing continuity and public service, there was room for adaptation. If Lady Louise and James chose to step into more public-facing roles, it would have to be on their terms rather than as a direct expectation. For now, though, the focus remained on Edward and the path ahead. His transition into the role of Duke of Edinburgh had begun, but there was still much to define as he attended events, met with representatives of the Duke of Edinburgh's award, and continued his work with various charities. He carried with him the awareness that his father's legacy was now his own responsibility. The challenge was not just to preserve that legacy, but to build upon it in a way that would make it meaningful for generations to come. As the dust settled on Prince Edward's appointment as the Duke of Edinburgh, his responsibilities only grew. The title had always been more than ceremonial. It represented a lifetime of service, something his father had embodied until his final days. Now Edward had to step fully into that role, balancing tradition with the expectations of a modern monarchy. While the immediate response to his new position had been largely positive, the weeks that followed saw increased scrutiny on what his appointment signified in the broader royal landscape. His first few engagements reinforced the importance of his new role, visiting youth centers and speaking with participants of the Duke of Edinburgh's award. He listened to their stories about how the program had shaped their lives. Some had gained confidence through outdoor challenges, while others had discovered new career paths through volunteer work. The program remained one of the most successful initiatives under the royal family's patronage, but Edward was also aware of the need to keep it relevant. Times had changed since his father first established it, and ensuring its accessibility to a more diverse range of participants was crucial. Alongside his wife, Sophie, he continued to carry out engagements with a renewed sense of purpose. The two had long been regarded as one of the most stable and hardworking coups within the royal family, and this transition only strengthened that perception. Their schedules became increasingly packed with public appearances, diplomatic meetings, and charity work. Sophie's role in particular took on a new dimension, already known for her work in preventing blindness and advocating for survivors of sexual violence. Her title as Duchess of Edinburgh gave her platform even more weight. She was now the patron of over 70 organizations working both in the United Kingdom and internationally. Despite their dedication, the conversations surrounding their future within the monarchy did not subside. Some commentators noted that while Edward and Sophie had become more prominent, the number of working royals had been steadily decreasing, with Prince Harry and Meghan stepping away from royal duties and Prince Andrew removed from public engagements. The number of senior royals actively representing the crown had shrunk significantly. That left King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, Catherine, and now Edward and Sophie as the core public-facing members of the family. This shift raised questions about the sustainability of the monarchy's approach. King Charles had long favored a streamlined institution, but with fewer working royals. The remaining members had an increased workload in recent years. It had been William and Catherine who carried the heaviest public schedules, balancing royal duties with raising their young children, with Edward and Sophie stepping into more prominent roles. They were now filling some of the gaps left by the absence of other family members. Whether this was a temporary adjustment or long-term shift remained to be seen amid these discussions. There was also speculation about the role of Edward and Sophie's children. Lady Louise Windsor, who had largely stayed out of the public eye while pursuing her studies, was approaching a point where she could decide whether to embrace royal duties more fully. Her younger brother James, now the Earl of Wessex, had inherited the title previously held by their father before he became Duke of Edinburgh. However, neither of them had been given the titles of His or Her Royal Highness at birth, and their parents had always expressed a desire for them to have more private lives. Reports suggested that Prince William had been considering whether to encourage a more active role for the younger generation of royals. The monarchy was at a crossroads, balancing the need to modernize with the expectation of maintaining royal visibility. While some believed Lady Louise and James should be given the choice to take on royal responsibilities, others argued that the family should continue with a more minimal approach, reserving duties for only the most senior members. As Edward continued his work in his new capacity, he avoided engaging in speculation about the future structure of the royal family. His focus remained on his commitments, particularly the legacy of his father. One of the most significant moments in his early days as Duke of Edinburgh came when he attended a major event celebrating the impact of the Duke of Edinburgh's award. Standing before a crowd of young achievers, he spoke about the program's importance and his desire to see it expand even further. His speech was met with the standing ovation, reinforcing the respect he had earned over decades of service. It was a reminder that despite the shifting landscape of the royal family, there was still a deep appreciation for continuity and commitment. Edward had never sought the spotlight, but now that it had found him, he was determined to use it to further the causes he believed in. With each passing engagement, Prince Edward's presence as the Duke of Edinburgh became more defined, no longer simply a working royal carrying out engagements. He was now deeply embedded in the long-term vision of the monarchy. His transition into the role had been smooth, but the weight of responsibility continued to grow. The public largely welcomed his new position, but the broader shifts within the royal family remained a topic of discussion. The monarchy was evolving, and Edward's increased role was a reflection of that change. His work with the Duke of Edinburgh's award remained a priority, but his commitments extended far beyond that. His responsibilities included patronage over several organizations focusing on everything from education and youth development to conservation and the arts. Many of these were causes he had been involved with for years, but his new title gave them renewed significance. His father had always believed that service was the foundation of the royal family's purpose, and Edward had embraced that belief fully. However, with fewer working royals, the demands placed on him and others within the core group of the family were increasing alongside his wife Sophie. He continued to take on a growing number of engagements, both domestically and abroad. Their international visits had become particularly important, reflecting the royal family's ongoing diplomatic role in recent months. Edward had traveled to several Commonwealth nations, reinforcing relationships that had long been central to the monarchy's identity. His visits often focused on youth initiatives, education, and military support, all areas where he had built significant experience over the years. During a visit to Estonia, he met with military personnel and government officials, discussing ongoing partnerships between the United Kingdom and its allies. His presence there underscored his role in representing the royal family on the global stage, something that had become increasingly necessary with the shifts in international relations. While King Charles and Prince William carried out most high-level diplomatic duties, Edward's growing role in foreign engagement signaled a broader effort to distribute responsibilities across a more limited number of working royals. Despite his increased presence, Edward remained one of the more understated members of the royal family. He had never been one for grand gestures or public spectacles, preferring a more measured approach to his duties. This had worked in his favor over the years, allowing him to build relationships with organizations and communities without the distractions that often came with royal fame. He was well respected within the circles he worked in, particularly among those involved in his father's legacy projects. Sophie's role had expanded as well, with her engagements taking her to various countries to advocate for the causes she had long championed. Her work in supporting survivors of gender-based violence had taken on greater visibility with her visits to international aid organizations, bringing further attention to the issue. As Duchess of Edinburgh, she had maintained her commitment to hands-on involvement, meeting with survivors, policymakers, and health care professionals to discuss long-term solutions. Like Edward, she had embraced the opportunity to use her title to drive meaningful impact. Meanwhile, discussions about the future of the monarchy persisted, with King Charles continuing to emphasize a streamlined approach. Questions remained about whether there would be a shift in how royal responsibilities were distributed. The absence of Prince Harry and Meghan had left noticeable gaps in royal engagements, and Prince Andrew's continued withdrawal from public duties further emphasized the reduced number of active senior royals. Edward and Sophie's increased presence had led some to believe that they would play a more central role in the monarchy's long-term structure. However, this was not officially confirmed, and the couple had not made any public statements about their expected trajectory. For now, their focus remained on their current commitments, carrying out their work with the same dedication that had defined their approach for decades. As Edward continued his engagements, he remained aware of the responsibility that came with his title. His father had dedicated much of his life to public service, and Edward saw it as his duty to uphold that legacy, but he also understood that his role was evolving. The monarchy was facing a new era, one where tradition had to be balanced with the realities of modern expectations. His ability to navigate that balance would define his tenure as Duke of Edinburgh. His approach, much like his father's, was centered on action rather than words. He did not seek to reshape the monarchy, but to strengthen the foundations that had already been laid. His title was not just about continuing a name, it was about continuing a mission. The work ahead was demanding, but he was prepared to meet it with the same steady commitment that had guided him throughout his life. As Prince Edward settled into his role as the Duke of Edinburgh, the monarchy continued to face an evolving landscape. His appointment had been a significant moment, one that reinforced the value of experience and dedication within the royal family. Yet with change came new challenges, and the future of the monarchy remained a subject of discussion. While Edward had embraced his role without controversy, the institution itself was under increased scrutiny, with ongoing conversations about its place in modern Britain. His work remained at the forefront, and the impact of his efforts was becoming increasingly evident. His leadership in the Duke of Edinburgh's award continued to drive the program forward, expanding opportunities for young people in ways that reflected the challenges of the present day. More schools and organizations were incorporating the award into their development programs, allowing a wider range of participants to engage with its principles. His father's belief in perseverance and self-reliance had been the foundation of the program, and Edward ensured that those values remained central to its mission. At the same time, his responsibilities extended far beyond the award. His schedule was filled with engagements that ranged from supporting military personnel to advocating for education initiatives. His presence at events often highlighted the monarchy's ongoing commitment to service, a principle that had defined Queen Elizabeth II's reign and now continued under King Charles. Edward had always been a consistent figure in royal engagements, but his new title made his role even more significant. So Sophie's influence as Duchess of Edinburgh had also grown. Her work had expanded internationally, and she was increasingly seen as one of the most active senior royals. Her focus on humanitarian efforts had taken her to countries where her advocacy made a direct impact, reinforcing the monarchy's charitable role. The couple's steady approach to royal duty stood in contrast to the more high-profile aspects of the institution, but their work was no less important. Their ability to maintain a strong public presence while avoiding the controversies that had surrounded other members of the family contributed to their increasing prominence as discussions about the monarchy's future continued. There was speculation about how younger members of the family would fit into its evolving structure. Lady Louise Windsor and James Earl of Wessex had remained largely out of the public eye. But with their father's new title, there were questions about whether that would change, while there had been no official statements regarding their roles. The possibility of them taking on more public dut in the coming years remained open. The monarchy had always been defined by continuity, and as one generation stepped into leadership roles, the next was expected to prepare for what lay ahead. King Charles's approach to royal engagements reflected a careful balance between maintaining tradition and adapting to societal expectations. He had reduced the number of working royals, but figures like Edward and Sophie had proven essential in ensuring that the monarchy remained connected to the public. Their increased visibility was a response to the demands of a modern royal institution, one that needed to maintain its relevance while staying true to its historical responsibilities. Edward himself had taken on the responsibility with quiet determination. Unlike some of his relatives, he had never sought attention or political influence. His focus had always been on service, and that commitment had not wavered. His father had set a precedent for what it meant to be the Duke of Edinburgh, and Edward honored that legacy with his actions rather than words. His ability to adapt to the demands of the role would define his tenure, just as his father's leadership had shaped the title before him. As the monarchy moved forward, the significance of Edward's role remained clear. His steady presence ensured continuity at a time when the institution faced external pressures and internal restructuring. His contributions, while sometimes understated, reinforced the idea that the monarchy was built on service rather than spectacle. While the future of the royal family would continue to evolve, Edward's appointment as the Duke of Ed had reaffirmed the importance of dedication, stability, and responsibility in upholding its legacy. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other